All right, let's continue to break down the President's speech for you now. We're joined in studio by our reporter, Tumaole Mohlaoli, for a sense of what else the President had to say. Tumaole, good morning. Thanks for coming in.
Good morning, Michelle.
A lot of criticism already around what the President had to say, specifically insofar as whistleblowers are concerned. There's this one line here in his speech where he talks about how we need to protect whistleblowers and how valuable their contribution has been. And one wonders what is actually being done on the ground.
Well, Michelle, that's a very good point. And when one looks at what has happened since the Zondo Commission of Inquiry, one of the most critical things that has happened in terms of protection of whistleblowers is the fact that we see Tumaole before the court of law. This is because she called out a certain Mr. X during the Commission of Inquiry. She was told beforehand that the witness is under protection and is testifying under protection, and under no circumstances is the witness to be compromised by being named, because this was the agreement that the witness had agreed to testify under.
And we know this is life or death in our country.
This is life or death in our country, and in the build up to that, the reason why the witness was protected because there were threats made to their lives and attacks even seemingly to their safety and security and that of their family. So this is something that I have seen that the State Capture Commission was very serious about. And of course, those recommendations and what has been happening since, the reason we see Tumaole before court is because she went against an instruction of the State Capture Commission of Inquiry in outing that witness. So this is one of the impacts that we see of the State Capture Commission's work.
So the other perhaps positive outcome of what the President had to say last night is no doubt around the Investigating Directorate.
Yes.
It was meant to have a 5-year term. He says it will now become a permanent feature of the NPA. What else stands out for you, Tommy?
Well, what stands out for me as well in terms of the recommendations, 350 recommendations that were made, and of course 202 of those recommendations were for criminal investigations. Now, 202 criminal investigations. That means that the work that we've seen so far, as President Ramaphosa had alluded to at the release of the reports, was only really the beginning, saying that the law enforcement agencies, apart from the names that have already been mentioned in the report and the names that are now already before the court, as I mentioned, Tumaole is one of them. We also have the Mohlaoli asbestos matter before the court in the Free State. But 202 more certainly paints a picture that it's not only the big wigs, so to speak, because there was some criticism that the State Capture report seems to be targeting high-profile, politically linked individuals. However, it seems to suggest that there would be more, especially those that were working behind the scenes to make sure that the state capture happened. And then, of course, another thing that came through was the 27 recommendations for recovery of assets. This would mean that those that acquired assets through the process of state capture, in terms of their relationships with the Guptas and in terms of agreements or deals that were entered into that go against legislation, would now be recouped, and this would include, of course, state property. This would include, of course, immovable properties like homes as well as office spaces, and one also hopes in funds that were taken.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. 202 criminal investigations. I mean, it sounds like very little. You just mentioned that some criticism was around perhaps the targeting of the big names insofar as state capture is concerned. Of course, it raises the question around whether we have the investigating capacity, the forensic investigating ability to prosecute the kinds of crimes involved in state capture.
This would speak to the repurposing of, the NPA and other bodies to ensure that, there's a separation of powers, because the NPA had found itself for a very long time to be inundated, both in prosecutorial sense, but also having to investigate some of the very, very, intricate webs that were spun to ensure that the state capture project underwent itself. So now we're having the repurposing of these state, organs to ensure that there's a separation of that, so that the NPA can focus on the prosecutorial things, and then when you have also, the repurposing, for instance, of the Special Directorate of Investigations within the police. It was rebranded, the Cobras with that new logo and the two fangs. That was something that was of great excitement when it was relaunched a few months ago. And Keza Khanyago's watch there, saying that this would be something that would go a long way to ensure that the call made by the President at the release of the reports to say that he wants to see the report's recommendations and those who are meant to answer before the court of law brought to book. So this is something that has been a wide-ranging, empowerment, you could say, of the state's capacity to ensure that the prosecution of those who are said to have a case to answer to happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the big issue there, and Tumaole, you've alluded to it, is the recovery of those hundreds of billions of rand lost to state capture. Tumaole Mohlaoli is our reporter tracking the story just around what the president had to say in his address to the nation last night.